In 2014, I saw a new TV screen being installed in the break room where I was working, and the HR person just happened to be there. So I asked and said, "Hey, what's a new TV for?" Because there's already a big screen TV in there. And they said that they had done a company-wide survey, and communication was one of the downfalls of the company, and so they're putting this TV up there for communication. I just had to chuckle because that was not the type of communication that was wrong with the company. The communication was between engineers and people on the floor, not between HR and telling us when the next break is. So I just thought that was funny. But anyway, good communication is a very important part of good culture. And while we have been communicating our entire lives, it's a skill that we still need to upgrade and learn from. And so today I brought on Josh Parnell, who is a leadership coach and host of the Limitless Leader podcast to talk about leadership, culture, and communication. So Josh, welcome. And to start off, what is one way that you have found to honor God in your business?
David, thank you for allowing me to be here. Such a privilege and an honor to be on your show. I love that you opened up with the communication piece. To answer your question directly, one way that I honor God in my business as a leadership coach, trainer, and speaker that primarily serves the automotive repair industry. I serve multiple industries, but the bulk of my clients come from that industry. And it's a blue collar industry. I like to say that I'm a bright light in a dark world, and it doesn't. I'm not necessarily referring to the industry. Just in general, that's who we are as believers and followers of Christ. And a way that I honor God is on my coaching calls with every client that I work with their permission. I will pray for them at the end of every coaching session. And I say with their permission because there have been some folks who don't want me to pray for them, and I understand that and I respect that. And so whatever direction they'd like for me to go in, I will. But I'm very adamant about letting them know who I am, what I believe, where my faith lies, and I believe in the power of prayer. And I know what God has done for me in my life and my family, and both personally and professionally. And so, of the 150-ish people that I've coached in the last 2.5 years, I think 145 have all said, "Yeah, let's do it." And so I mean, even right now, I'm every Wednesday I'm praying for an atheist, and and
Interesting.
and he's good with it.
Hmm. Very interesting. That's good. That's good. I've been starting to pray with my clients too at the end, and we don't always hit it every time, but sometimes it seems appropriate to say, "Hey, we've
Yeah.
talked about a lot. Let's
hmm
just run with it." Josh, give us a little background of why are you at your place today where you are? What is the journey God has led you on?
Sure. So again, thanks for the opportunity, David. My journey into entrepreneurship began about 3.5 years ago. I was working at a corporate job, working for a phenomenal company in a great industry, loving the role that I was in, loving the people that I was working with and working for. But God started putting something in me that I fought for months. There was a feeling that I was fighting, and that was to leave the job that I was at and start my own thing. And logically, it didn't make sense for all the reasons I just shared. But He kept tugging on my heart. He kept calling me out of this organization. And unbeknownst to me, I didn't know what was next. I didn't fully understand or have the clarity and direction comfortable that I felt comfortable with to be able to make that move. But as a believer, David, that when God, it's really our job to be obedient. And
Yeah.
for a while, I kept saying, "All right, God, if this is what you want me to do, whatever this is, then show me, and I'll trust you." And after months of me having that discussion with Him, finally He flipped a switch in me and said, "No, Josh, trust me, and I'll show you." And
Hmm.
so just like that, I was able to say, okay, you know what? I truly am going to let go and see where this thing goes. And so I remember one of the first people that I spoke about this was with my wife, of course, and I let her know what I felt like God was calling me to do, and her natural and understandable response was, "What? No, that doesn't make sense. Like why would we do that?
Sure.
Because I'm talking about leaving the safety of a great job, a great organization, the security and the benefits and all the things that come with it, to jump into this terrifying world of entrepreneurship." And I said, "Look, I understand how crazy this might sound, I feel so strongly about this that if God really wants me to do this, it means that you're also doing this with me. And if he's speaking this strongly to me, then he's going to do the same for you. And so I said, I'm not going to press the issue, but I just want to let you know what I'm feeling. And about a week later, she came to me and said, okay, let's do it. And so about 3 weeks after that is when the move actually was made. And so, that was about 2.5, almost 3 years ago,
Yeah.
jumping into entrepreneurship as a full-time leadership coach, trainer, and speaker. And God has allowed me the opportunities now to reach more people, to impact more people, and build more leaders, because that's the mission that I'm on, and that's the work that I've been doing and called to do. And thankfully, He is continuing to bless me with opportunities to do that.
Yep. I totally resonate with that because sometimes it's like, is it my idea or God's idea? But
Yeah,
if it's fully God's idea, there's no failure. You move forward and He takes care of things.
yeah, that's
Although
good.
I have made many bad decisions and it probably wasn't of God, but I've learned from them and away you go.
I've
Um,
learned over the years, David, like, because I've also tried to force things. I think we all have, and what we know is that our plans can't be forced, but God's plans can't be stopped. And when I finally just decide, you know what, I'm going to just let God do the thing. Why do I continue to insert myself and get in the way of what He's doing? This is where obedience comes into play. And this is where obedience and further diligence, which is what you shared with me prior to us going live, and I appreciate you for sharing this. Diligence comes into play. Like, how diligent are you in the work that you're doing that is unto the Lord? And this is where, as long as we keep on being obedient, being diligent, He's going to keep on lighting our path, and we're going to take one step at a time and just keep on walking in faith.
yep. And that's a great thing is walking in faith. Um, so we're going to talk about culture just a little bit.
Sure.
And what are the top, I'm going to just ask, what are the top few things that you view that is important in culture? I mean, obviously a lot of things are important in culture.
Yeah, I think, culture is something that is certainly taught. It can be caught. Sorry, it is caught. It can be taught. So you want to teach it to some degree, but it's going to be something that's going to be caught more than anything, because culture is your core values plus your behaviors. So if when I can properly define what my core values are as an organization and the behaviors that follow suit. Your core values are going to drive your behaviors, but ultimately your behaviors also drive your core values, because your core values are who you are. Core is Latin for heart, so core is who we are. So it's not necessarily aspirational. It's not like what I aspire to be, what I want to be. Like, I want to be. I don't know. I'm trying to think of something that maybe I'm not. Like, I'm not naturally an extrovert. I'm not naturally outgoing, although as a leadership speaker primarily and trainer, I know how to turn it on, and I do turn it on. But being an introvert that I am, when it's all said and done, I definitely need to recharge. That's right. But like, on my own, I mean, it's exhausting for me in a good way, though. I love what I do. I love being able to speak in front of audiences. I love being able to really impact a room, because I feed off of that energy. But core values is who we are. So if I'm going to say I want, like, we are outgoing and like tons of fun, like, I mean, I jokingly tell, like, my family will be like, "Man, you're kind of boring," and I mean, they say it in the nice way possible. But I'm like, I mean, I go to
Sure.
sleep at 8 o'clock, David. Like, I'm up early, but I'm I don't stay up late. Like, I don't love big crowds, unless I'm speaking there or training. But I'm just that's just how I'm wired, and I've always been that way. So if we have a core value of fun, I need to know, like, look, I'm going to play my role in this, but this is more like aspirational than anything. And so when I think about core values, it's like, well, who am I? Like, I am a man of integrity. I am a man of faith. I am someone who I'm trying to think of the right way to say it. I'll just say it like, I despise bullying, absolutely despise bullying. And so we want to be kind at all times. And being clear is also being kind. So even when you're leading people, there's a way to be kind. It doesn't mean that you're a people pleaser or that you are constantly going to be a yes man or a yes woman, but we want to be kind at all times. I mean, it's like, being mean gets you nowhere. So I know I'm kind of going off on a tangent, but I think to further to circle back to your question, being able to live your core values into who you are, who your organization is, that kind of culture is caught. And if the people who are onboarding onto your team and getting hired and trained accordingly, if they're jumping on your team, on your bus, they're gonna likely weed themselves out, because it's if that's not who they are, it's going to be an obvious culture fit that's not going to work. So that's one way to answer it. I think being able to exercise key practices and principles like communication to protect the culture at all costs, I think is something that I'm mindful of. I like that you opened up with communication. What we know is that poor communication costs business owners 18% of total salaries paid out on an annual basis. So to put this into perspective, if you're a business owner paying, for math purposes, $1 million in salary across an annual calendar year, poor communication could actually be creating sunk cost in the amount of $180,000 every single year, which also equates to 7.47 hours of lost time, all because of poor communication. Because when there's a breakdown in communication, voids get created and negativity tends to fill those voids. So being able to implement key practices like effective communication, understanding what proper delegation looks like, these are things that play a massive role in culture, but we've got to make the time to do all these things.
Going back to what you started with, as far as more caught than taught, I
Mm-hmm.
know that's what my mom always said. Right? I've listened to a speaker who said, parenting is like a three-legged stool. You need to teach it, you need to model it, you need to pray for your kids. And I think
That's
that's
good.
similar to what we need as Christian business owners need to do is model it, teach it, and pray for our employees too, that they would model this core values in that.
Yeah,
Um,
that's good.
but let's dig a little deeper into communication because right now I work a full-time job and I'm seeing the communication thing too. And even, hey, there's a change in what we've done and that communication has not been made. And so people are continuing doing things the old way versus the new way.
Yeah.
And the problems just snowball from there. So what can we do to, as leaders, as business owners or whatever, to communicate better?
I'm going to share 5 steps to effective communication, but before I
Okay.
do, I'll share that whenever we're communicating with someone, there's often multiple conversations happening for the one that's actually happening. And what I mean by this is it's the conversation that I'm having, it's the conversation that you're having, it's the one that I think that we're having and the one that you think that we're having. That's why the greatest misconception about communication is the fact that it's actually happening.
Yep.
So when we can implement what I call the 5 steps to effective communication, we're going to start seeing less voids be created. Because as I shared, when there's a breakdown in communication, voids get created, negativity fills those voids. So I think anyone listening or watching this episode can attest to the fact that they can relate to these silos that are being created. Even amongst a small organization, there's multiple silos that often get popped up because of the breakdowns in communication. So if we're walking through the 5 steps, I'm going to begin with assuming positive intent. We're always going to assume positive intent. We know that
Mhm.
we are humans and humans make mistakes and we're not perfect. The only perfect being out there is God. Perfection's unattainable. So we have to expect not only the unexpected, but also expect mistakes to occur at times. We need to expect failures to occur. And that's fine, because when we fail at something, it doesn't make us a failure. Just like if we lose, it doesn't make us a loser. These actions don't become our identity. So we as leaders get to create these safe spaces, places, and platforms to allow for growth. And we know that mistakes are going to happen. We know that there's going to be some failures along the way, but we're going to assume positive intent in all things that we do. So when someone does something that we weren't expecting them to do or makes a mistake, the easy thing for us to do as leaders is to go and point fingers and say, you didn't do this, you didn't do that, or, what's your deal? And, and really verbally attack them. And that's probably a harsh way of saying it. But what we can also do is to assume positive intent, because we're building this foundational, we're creating a firm foundation. We're laying the groundwork. So we all assume positive intent. And we can also seek first to understand, then be understood, which is the second step. So if I'm seeking first to understand, then be understood, which, by the way, is one of the 7 habits of highly effective people, a great book by Stephen Covey, then I'm no longer immediately going to them for the sake of being understood and saying, well, David, you should have done it like this. I can't believe X, Y, or Z. I'm going to say, hey, David, help me understand, what you were thinking here. Help me understand your thought process. Help me understand why this occurred. It's more palatable for you to receive. I'm not coming at you in a way where you might take it defensively. Keep in mind, if I've already built this foundational relationship with you, when I approach you in a place to understand versus be understood, you're going to be okay with this. You know that my feedback or my questions are coming from a good place, and I'm pointing to my heart for a reason, because I care about you. And people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. So we as leaders get to create safety and trust so that we can provide clarity and direction. So when we assume positive intent, we can the second step is we can seek first to understand, then be understood. We can do this in the form of the third step, fall in love with asking questions. So we are great as leaders, we're great at providing directive after directive after directive, but it doesn't necessarily mean that we're providing that clarity and direction that I just referenced. We can provide clarity and direction through questions, asking questions. And then when we think we're done asking questions, we ask more questions. And this is what I call, like, I use this roots to results coaching method in my own coaching. And that is when we ask a question, and regardless of the response that I receive, the second step of that 3-step roots to results method is to say, tell me more. Great, David, tell me more. You're going to tell me more because I'm asking for it. And then regardless of what your response is, I'm going to ask the awe question, AWE. And what else? And what else? David, I'll say, man, this is the one of, if not the most powerful questions any coach or leader should be asking their team. What else? When they ask what else, there is undoubtedly always something else. And so the more questions we can ask, the more we can help empower our team members to discover the answers from within, because we're getting to the root of something. And you will see people physically in front of you have this light bulb moment. They have this epiphany while you're asking them questions, because they discover the answer from within. You are responsible for pulling it out of them because of the questions that you asked. So the fourth step after we ask questions is, of course, to listen. If we're going to ask questions, we need to make sure that we're listening. And there's a difference between hearing someone and listening to someone. If we're hearing someone, we're simply waiting for them to stop talking so we can tell them what we want to say. But if we're listening, we're receiving information, we're processing information, and we're utilizing that information to best serve that person. And we're doing so empathetically. And empathizing with someone doesn't necessarily mean that we need to experience the same situation as that person, but it does mean that we can imagine their circumstances and accept their feelings without invalidating them. And many of us are inadvertently and unintentionally invalidating those that we're leading or serving, and we have no idea that we're doing it. So we get to listen and empathize with them and show that we understand and truly process what's being shared before we say what we want to say, which means that we're listening to understand. We're not listening to reply. And then the fifth and final step, and by the way, speaking of listening, I appreciate you listening and allowing me to share all 5 of these steps. You've been awesome. So as we get into the fifth and final step, that is to stay positive, which is not naive leadership. Staying positive, like positive leadership, is not naive leadership. We know that there's going to be tough times. We know there's going to be obstacles and challenges that we're going to have to pivot through and adapt and overcome. But when we can stay positive, we have to remember that we're the ones who our team members are feeding off of in terms of our influence and our energy. So the question I'd ask everyone to ask themselves is, does my team feel the weight of my title or the influence of my leadership? Because if you're staying positive amidst the tough times, recognizing that, look, I'm going to be very transparent with my team within reason and share with them what's going on, the tough things, the obstacles, the challenges, but I'm going to stay positive through it. And there's a 3-piece combo on how to stay positive. Number one, we go directly to the source. So I'm going to go directly to you. If there's an issue that I'll throw issue in air quotes. If there's an issue that I feel like maybe David's upset with me, maybe David said something and I took it the wrong way because I didn't assume positive intent. So I'm starting to feel these feelings because of the thoughts that I'm having. I want to go directly to David rather than me going to someone else and saying, hey, did you guys see what David, did you see David come in? And so it's this water cooler talk. It's this gossip that gets introduced, and you're starting to kind of walk a fine line between complaining. And the second piece is to implement the no complaining rule. So this 3-piece combo underneath the stay positive step is to assume positive intent, implement the no complaining rule, which is exactly what it sounds like. Here, we're not going to complain. There's no place for it. All we're doing is allowing and introducing negativity, which is like quicksand to get out of. And then the third combo piece, if you will, is to um, bring a solution with a problem. So if you're going to bring a problem to the table, then pair that with a solution. Now, I'm almost done. I appreciate you giving me this time. All of the things I just shared, the beauty in this is that they not only apply at work, they also apply at home. Because if you're listening or watching and you're married or you're in a relationship, you know that communication is arguably the greatest challenge in your relationship as well. So when we can introduce so when we can do all these things that I talk about, they apply at work and at home, with the exception of one, which is the very last thing I shared. Folks, as a married man, I have learned that sometimes when my wife brings a problem to me, or she wants to vent or share what's going on that's a negative thing for her, I'm thinking, hey, you know what? I'm getting ready to make her day because I'm going to give her a solution. I'm getting ready to solve her problem. But I think we all know sometimes
It's
our
always true.
spouses
Yeah.
just want us to listen, right? So anyway, just to kind of put a bow on this, I appreciate you giving me the time, David. But um, at home, it's hit or miss. Do we want to provide a solution with every problem? I've learned that's not the case, and that's why my wife and I will ask each other the question of, do you want me to listen or reply? That tells each other how we want each other to show up in that specific moment.
Yeah. As far as the solution, generally what it's, I found the rule is if you're bringing a problem to somebody, you come with a solution. Not if they're bringing a problem to you, but if you're bringing a problem to your supervisor,
That's right.
it's good to bring at least one solution because that shows that you've thought things through.
Yeah.
And ideally, it's like I have both of these. Which would you rather me do? And then he can coach you through versus you just coming to him and telling you what to do. Um,
I appreciate the
some,
fact that you,
yeah,
sorry, I was going to say, David, I appreciate the fact that you differentiated the two just now, because I think that's important. One of the things that I coach folks on is the 1-3-1 rule, where if you bring a problem, then prepare 3 viable solutions and then make a determination on of which of those 3 that you're going to act on. And you can have your leader or manager help you with that as well.
yeah. And a previous guest, and I'm using it at work now too. He's like, we like to apply water to the fire, not gasoline.
Oh
You
yeah,
know,
that's good.
it's just a visual aid of showing water on the gasoline. And so some of the guys who work with me is like, how about a little oil? He's just trying to, he's
Yeah.
trying to bring back because I continue to remind them water. Don't stir the pot. We're here to
Yeah.
make peace, and that's the peacemakers. A lot of said all that stuff you said was really good. Can you give me a story or example? Because here's the thing: you said all these things. How do we apply this? Like, if how do we simply apply this in a situation? Because we're at work and people come to us, we talk, we run, we do this or that. It's just busy. How
Sure.
do we stop the busyness and still communicate effectively?
Yeah, I mean, it's I don't want to say it's a loaded question, David, but I'll say this: we have to make the time. I mean, a lot of us are going to say that we don't have the time, but respectfully, I'm going to encourage everyone to make the time. The example I give in relation to what I just shared is something that I often share in a training. And keep in mind, the bulk of my audience that I primarily serve is in the automotive repair industry. So imagine if you were walking into an automotive repair shop and you have the front service counter there, and you have your service manager and service advisor who are behind the counter. You have your technicians who are in the bays working on vehicles. And when I present this analogy to my audience, it's typically folks who are in that industry. And so this is the example I give. So in terms of how to apply it, I'm going to give you the actual example I provide, but also how to apply the 5 steps. David, let's say you're the owner, you're the shop owner, and I'm the manager. And so I'm already at the shop. Let's say we open at 7:30, and I get there, before we open. I get the lights on. I go through the day-to-day operations, and we're rolling, right? I mean, so I have guests that are coming in, and I'm serving guests, and we're fixing cars, and I'm on the counter, and I'm doing my job. And then owner David rolls in around 9 o'clock. And so David comes in and he makes a beeline for his office. Doesn't say hi, no hugs, handshakes, high fives like David normally does. Normally I see David, and David is pretty jovial. He's positive. He's a great leader. I enjoy working for him. and working with him. And David comes in today, doesn't make eye contact, doesn't even say good morning, just makes a beeline for his office. So naturally, I'm starting to think, man, what's wrong with David? Is he upset with me? Did I do something? Am I in trouble? And I started thinking these thoughts. And one of the greatest mistakes any of us can make is assuming all of our thoughts are actually true. What we know is that humans have up to 60,000 thoughts per day. And studies show that 80% of our thoughts are negative and 90% of our thoughts are repetitive. So it's no wonder why we regularly experience stress and doubt and concern and anxiety and fear. But fear is simply false evidence appearing real. And we will always find evidence in the things that we believe. But again, one of the greatest mistakes we can make is assuming all of our thoughts or beliefs in this case are true, because we do operate under limiting beliefs, unfortunately. So I start thinking, you know what, David's upset with me. David's going to fire me. I'm not, I'm just not feeling very confident all of a sudden, which are dictated from my thoughts, because our thoughts dictate feelings, our feelings dictate actions, and our actions dictate results. So keep in mind, I start thinking something that may be inaccurate. I start feeling something based on those thoughts. I start feeling a level of inadequacy, a level of maybe a lack of confidence. And the actions I take are indicative of those feelings. I start saying, you know what? I'm not really as motivated as I was an hour ago. I'm not really feeling that great about things today. And I'm not necessarily as enthusiastic as I was when the last guest came in, because all of a sudden I'm thinking something and feeling something based on those thoughts. So the actions I take is actually kind of I kind of sink back and say, you know, I'm just going to kind of lay low today. You know, I'm not really as much of a go-getter as I was because of all these thoughts and subsequent feelings. And of course, the results that I get are indicative of all the things that came before it. Now, what I could have done is I could have gone directly to David immediately and start asking questions. I'm going to first and foremost, I'm going to assume positive intent, because David and I have already built that relationship, so I can assume positive intent. So when I go to David and say, "Hey, David, you came in and this is what I witnessed. Help me understand. Seek first to understand, then be understood." Right? Help me understand. How are you doing? How are things going? What can I do to serve you? What can I do to help you today? I'm asking questions in an effort to understand. And then it's very likely in a lot of cases that David's going to say, "Oh, Josh, I'm so sorry. I didn't even realize I had a call that I had to get to. I was running late because of something happened at home, blah, blah, blah," right? So all the while I am thinking something that's not true, and you're just trying to get to a phone call, and and you're fine. Everything's fine. I'm fine. I didn't know that because I was telling myself a narrative that's not even true. And I think a lot of us can relate to something like this, where there's some kind of interaction that occurs that is not necessarily the norm. So we start thinking something based on this exception to the rule. But if we can always assume positive intent, if we can always create a firm foundation, then we can then go directly to the source and start seeking to understand, asking questions, listening, and staying positive amidst it all.
Yep. No, that's absolutely true. We do tell ourselves stories that aren't always true. And so that begin with positive intent is huge, because there's so many times we tell ourselves lies and stories, we make things up. And if you go ask the person,
Yeah.
they never thought any of that stuff. Absolutely true. I've experienced that tons of times in my life. Um, so very good. You have said a lot of great things today. Do you have one final word of inspiration or challenge to my audience that you'd like to leave them with?
When is this going to air?
Probably January.
Okay. Now's the good time then. It's January. It's 2026. We have an opportunity to really level up and sharpen your axe and work on yourself spiritually, physically, emotionally, academically, financially. We're going to find reasons or excuses, depending on the perspective. We're going to find reasons why we won't do something. I'm going to challenge everyone who's listening or watching this episode to make 2026 your best year yet. The sky is not the limit. The sky is your starting point. So we're going to go from this year, we're going to go from blue to black. We're going to start in the sky, in the blue, and we're going to go to black. We're going to go to a rare air. We're going to go to a place that most people never even imagine, because it's far beyond their wildest dreams. But you're going to choose to do things differently this year. You're going to choose to be uncomfortable this year, because growth and comfort can't coexist. So this year, my challenge to you is to go from blue to black and to recognize that there is actually a day in the year called Quitter's Day, which falls on the second Friday in January. Because statistically speaking, over 50% of people who create a New Year's resolution will have already quit by Quitter's Day. And this year in January, it's January 10th. January 10th is officially Quitter's Day. But don't make January 10th the day for you. Don't quit. Keep going, keep pressing on, keep moving forward, and go from blue to black in 2026.
Hmm. Never heard of Quitter's Day, but anyway, thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
That's an interesting thing. And yes, I encourage you, don't quit. Just keep moving forward.
Yeah.
Um, Josh, thank you so much for your time and encouragement today. I talk about culture and communication and how to communicate better. And so, friends, if you're looking to go deeper and to learn more about Josh and his work, check out the show notes and for sites and free resources and all that. And remember, your business represents the great God you serve. So build a business worthy of God's name and in a way that honors Him.